appeals to. Haven't you read, he replied, at the beginning, the Creator, quote, made them male and female, right? Genesis 1. And said, for this reason, a man will leave his father and mother and be united to his wife, and the two will become one flesh, Genesis 2. So they are no longer two, Jesus says, but one. Therefore, what God has joined together, let man not separate. What does Jesus appeal to in the question of divorce? The power of sexuality. He simply says, listen, let me tell you what God's intention was from the beginning. Male and female, the two becoming one flesh. And what God has joined, let no one separate. What I want you to see is this, and we're going to hit this a lot tomorrow. Your view of sex really ultimately hinges on your view of God. All these discussions about sexuality really hinge on what you think God is like. Is God holding out? Does he not have your best interests at heart? Does he know what he's doing? And what Jesus appeals to when asked about this divorce issue is, hey, listen, the Creator's design, male, female, and the two become one flesh. So here's Scripture's teaching when you get into the New Testament. Sexuality is so majestic and yet so sacred and so powerful. On the one hand, it's wonderful and it's not dirty and naughty and bad. On the other hand, it's powerful, and anything that's powerful has rules that govern its behavior. I mean, for instance, when you go home to your dorm, your apartment, to wherever, and let's say an electrician comes over and says, hey, listen, it's a really bad idea for you to dip your fingers in water and then stick them in an electrical socket. Would you be angry at the electrician for giving you that warning? Is the electrician unfair, unjust, arbitrary for telling you that great harm can come from misusing electricity? No. Or how about the way the courts handle drunk driving? I mean, do we think the courts are unfair because they look at drunk drivers and say cars are way too powerful and too much damage can be done? So we just simply will not tolerate driving a car when you're drunk? Do we look at the courts and say they're arbitrary and fair? Not at all. Because we get that things that are powerful have rules that govern their behavior. Well, that's the Scripture teaching. Sex is fantastic, but it's so powerful that great harm can come from its misuse. And in the same way we look at the electrician or the courts, we should then look at God and simply say, okay, well, it'd be really fun to do now, but I guess I'll hold out. It is fantastic, but it's powerful. And Scripture grounds so much of its teaching in the New Testament by appealing to Genesis 1 and 2. I mean, Paul will even do this in 1 Corinthians 6, talking about joining, because you are now a member of Christ, joining Christ with prostitutes and so on. I mean, it's just this deep, powerful teaching. It's good, it's powerful. Now, I'm a big fan of show and tell. And instead of telling you that Scripture has a high view of sex, I want to show you the only sex scene I can find in the Bible. And if you've been at Rock Harbor, you've seen us do some teaching on this from Song of Solomon. We're going to go there in a moment. There's a big debate over the book. Is it just a metaphor of God's love for his people? And it certainly is that. Paul teaches that marriage is that. Human love relationships are that. But I think it's a little more than that too. And so we want to look at 6 different aspects of divine sex. And it's going to get warmer. So hopefully my brother and I back there will make it and not melt too bad. But here's the reason we're going to do this. I want to convince you, not out of guilt, not out of drudgery, not out of some legalistic, well, but through inspiring you, that this is just simply the greatest thing ever. And you can have $5 today, or you can have $5 million 3 years from now. And that's the choice that sits before you in terms of what you do with your sexuality. So let's go to the book Song of Solomon. We're going to look, and if you're a note taker, don't worry about taking notes on this. I'd rather you just kind of soak in it a little bit and be inspired. Song of Solomon, we meet 3 characters. We're going to chapter 4. We meet a man that is called the lover. We meet a woman called the beloved. And we meet a group of friends, the community. We don't know who really they are. Some think it's the voice of God affirming this stuff. Other people think, no, it's just the community. Some people don't even take this as literally as I'm going to take it, so we recognize there's some debates about it. But for theological reasons I will not delve into, I think this is an appropriate way of understanding the book as a love story between a man and a woman that puts on display God's desires for romance and sexuality. So we've talked about it is good, it is powerful. Let's look at how that plays out. The first 3 chapters of Song of Solomon, they meet, fall in love, do the things that we all do. They get married at the end of chapter 3. Chapter 4, we are now in the Hotel 6 in Jerusalem for their honeymoon. We're going to start in verse 1. Now some of these Jewish metaphors are funny. How beautiful. Now, I want you to notice first, the guy doesn't start talking until verse 11. Or no, he doesn't start putting the moves on her until verse 11. He talks for 10 verses, which is more than most men want to talk on their honeymoon night. But I want you to notice, well, I'll just read it and then we'll talk about it. He says, how beautiful you are, my darling. Oh, how beautiful. Your eyes behind your veil are doves. They speak of peace. Your hair is like a flock of goats. I have a small flock, evidently. Your hair is like a flock of goats descending from Mount Gilead. It speaks of God's provision, believe it or not. I mean, guys, if you want to try these on later, go for it. Your teeth are like a flock of sheep just shorn, coming up from the washing, meaning they're clean, which is good. Fellas, you want a woman with clean teeth. And then each has its twin. Not one of them is alone. So she's got her teeth and they're clean. So that's a big deal. Your lips are like a scarlet ribbon. Your mouth is lovely. Your temples behind your veil are like the halves of a pomegranate. Your neck is like the Tower of David, built with elegance. On it hang 1,000 shields. He's saying that she's regal, right? So if you can get past all that weird. Somebody actually drew, I found this on the internet, somebody actually drew her taking all of these literally. It was funny. Oh, all right. Your neck is like the Tower of David, built with elegance. On it hang 1,000 shields, all of them shields of warriors. Your 2 breasts are like 2 fawns, like twin fawns of a gazelle that browse among the lilies. Men and women, this guy starts with something I call gentle wonder. They're obviously in the bridal chamber. They're obviously undressing. And what he does is that he leads with romance. The language of poetry, their language of passion. He recognizes, and you guys know the metaphor, there's a crock-potness to a woman's sexuality as opposed to kind of the microwaveness of a guy's sexuality. You guys familiar with this? No? Yes? Well, okay, kids. Should have learned this earlier. For men, and I'm not trying to be cute or fun, although I do want to lighten, because we are going to pound pretty hard here in a little bit in terms of getting tense. But it is just fascinating. It's like we never talk about this stuff. And when you talk about it in a church setting or a school setting or something like that, it just feels odd, doesn't it? It feels like we should be, I don't know. I don't know where I was going with that point. I don't even know if it was a point. What is this camera?